We've been talking about how manga have been taking over the North American comic book market for adults for quite some time. There's recently an article from Anime News Network. Manga's growth in popularity is here to stay, industry leaders predict. I personally was clued into this article from another article from bleedingfool.com. So I went and checked it out, and they had a lot of really interesting information in there that you can really glean why manga is so successful in comparison to DC Comics, Marvel Comics, traditional adult superhero comics that have kind of dominated the American landscape for so many decades. It doesn't appear to be changing anytime soon. So I definitely wanted to read some of these statements from industry leaders in manga and kind of explore where manga is succeeding and how DC Comics and Marvel Comics can learn from that and probably do a better job, because they are losing ground rapidly. And once you hear some of these numbers, you are going to be as shocked as I am. It's been over 2 years since My Hero Academia landed a spot as the first manga to crack the top 3 in the New York Times best-selling graphic books list. Since then, manga has continued holding its place among the top of the list, with My Hero Academia, Jujutsu Kaisen, and Chainsaw Man all landing in the top 2 throughout 2021. As for what's next, leaders in the industry are predicting that manga's popularity is here to stay throughout 2022 and beyond. Obviously, being at the top of the New York Times bestseller list is important, and it definitely shows that you've transcended outside of just your regular comic book readers. Manga is very hot. But if you look at the charts regarding comic books, it's plain as day. When you look at the graphic novel sales for adults, throughout 2021, I don't think DC or Marvel had one book ever crack the top 10 in any month. And those sales are through bookstore channels. We know that's where the majority of growth is coming from. What we also hadn't seen really prior to 2021 was manga creeping into the top 10, top 20 graphic novel sales in actually the direct market, comic book shops. We're starting to see 2 or 3 mangas from Viz Media or Dark Horse really creep into there. And I have a feeling we're going to start seeing manga start taking over at least a graphic novel section of your comic book shops as well. The popularity is enormous. If you're a comic book shop and you don't at least have a manga section, I don't know what to tell you. You want to bring new readers in, and that's where the new readers are coming in. So I don't blame them. And I imagine within the next 2 or 3 years, they're going to dominate the graphic novel sales in comic shops as well. And they probably won't see that anytime soon until Marvel and DC do something dramatic to really change their fortunes in the current comic book landscape. Grandview Research, a global market research publishing and consultant firm based out of San Francisco, predicts that the anime market as a whole will double in size from 2020 to 2028. The report said that the growth in manga particularly has urged more young people to go into the field, meaning the market will continue to be popular for years to come. That is absolutely one of the things that is driving the popularity of manga. The animes are awesome. They're easily accessible. You have all these places where you can go to get the anime, and they're pretty much faithful adaptations of the manga. So if you want to continue the story, you only have to go to your bookstore and find the next volume to continue your story. You don't get that anywhere with DC or Marvel. There's no direct line for these things where manga has that kind of built in, and they have certainly captured that younger audience. There are more young readers of comic books today than there ever have been, and they're not interested, for the most part, in DC and Marvel comics. They're interested in reading comic books, but they're going into manga, and then they're finding other avenues to continue reading. You almost don't have to pay any money on purpose and still get access to all this wonderful entertainment. I don't get Netflix because it has anime. I get Netflix because it has The Big Bang Theory and Seinfeld and stuff like that. It just so happens to have all these wonderful animes that I'm interested in. Shonen Jump is only $2 or $3 a month. There's no better bargain, and young people are absolutely flocking to it. DC and Marvel need to find a way to get to these young people. Faithful adaptations of their classic stories in animation will certainly help that. They certainly have the platforms that are very popular, specifically Disney Plus. You go over and HBO Max isn't quite there yet, but there's no through line through those pieces of entertainment that really go through the comic books, and that's really holding them back. Interest for manga grew during COVID-19, in part due to the increase in new anime on streaming sites such as Funimation and Crunchyroll. The increase in streaming availability paired with more people cooped up at home meant a lot of people began watching anime and reading manga. COVID certainly drove new fans to join online communities and watch anime and read manga, and probably led to existing fans reading more, said Ben Applegate, Director of Publishing Services at Penguin Random House. The sheer volume and accessibility of manga is absolutely breathtaking. When you think about the early days of comic books, when it really built up, they were accessible. You went to your pharmacy, you went to the local convenience store or whatever, probably a grocery store back in the day, and there was a spinner rack. The comic books, generally speaking, were very cheap. They were accessible. Mom didn't feel so bad throwing a nickel down, throwing a quarter down or whatever, and you can go beat the damn thing up and read it 100 billion times. Today's spinner rack is an iPhone. It's a tablet. And DC and Marvel are absolutely absent when it comes to these applications and ways to introduce people to their form of entertainment. There's no better value in entertainment than Shonen Jump. That app is absolutely amazing. For $2 a month, you will never ever run out of high quality manga to read. I have it myself and I love it. My wife's been reading it as well. We are very much enjoying it. You will never get that experience for DC or Marvel. DC Infinite Universe isn't available worldwide, and it's much more expensive, and it's much more limited as to what's available. Marvel Unlimited also isn't available worldwide. It's also much more expensive, and it also offers far less actual comic books than Shonen Jump, especially full comic books. How DC and Marvel have dropped the ball so spectacularly. You had essentially everyone indoors in the world for a year and a half, and you didn't think, let's offer 2 months of our online app for free. Let's make sure that our online digital comic book app is available worldwide during a worldwide pandemic where people can't go out and get any access to it. Absolute geniuses over at Marvel and DC. Japanese companies, manga, cracked this code and they were ready for it. And that's why it blew up, because they had prepared the market and had the tools and means available to meet a demand that wasn't there before. DC and Marvel were asleep at the wheel, and they still are today. And it's absolutely shameless on their part that they haven't done more to get out wider, faster, and absolutely cheaper. I know there are a lot of comic book retailers that say you can't offer the digital comic for less money than you offer the physical comic. You have to offer the digital comic for less than the physical comic book. That's what everyone else in the market is doing. By not doing that, you are cutting down your audience and you're losing out on the phenomenal amount of growth going. Everybody is reading comic books, but they're not reading in DC because they're morons and they don't know how to get out of their own way. Many fans are simply choosing manga over comics produced by companies such as Marvel and DC. This could be for a variety of reasons. Manga is written by one author as opposed to a company, which allows for more creativity and flexibility, a more consistent art style, and often bolder topics. The internet has also increased manga's popularity with the availability of reading content online and the accessibility of online forums for fans to discuss their favorite series. You cannot understate or undervalue just how important it is for manga that essentially you start at volume 1 and you end whatever the last volume is. You want to read Batman? Good luck on that one, finding out exactly what the Batman story is. It's untenable at this point. With manga, there's a clear through line. And the fact that there is one voice, one creator that has essentially created their world and then expanded it absolutely plays to the strength of manga. What's one of the things that a lot of superhero comic fans are tired of? Stop destroying the origins of these characters. Stop destroying the fabric of these characters. But none of these writers who are writing Batman or Spider-Man or X-Men or Superman, they didn't create any of this stuff. They have no skin in the game. What the fuck do they care if they destroy all this stuff? They just want to do something neat. They just want to copy what somebody else did with another character that they like with this character. And it makes everything so watered down and tired and boring, and it just kills interest from longtime readers. And then you have new readers that try to come in. They're like, you know what? I've always liked Wolverine. That's a newer character in comparison to a Batman or a Superman or even a Spider-Man. Good luck with that. Good luck figuring out what the real origin of Wolverine is. There's only been 4 of them, and it just makes the point of entry into comic books a real hassle. And while there certainly are a lot of comic book enthusiasts, and there are online communities and forums, you will never see numbers like I'm about to tell you right now with interest in manga via Reddit. The subreddit Manga Collectors grew from around 11,000 members in January of 2020 to over 1 million in March of 2022. Many users in the subreddit began collecting during COVID-19. Just looking at the jump in membership in the subreddit between when I joined in late December last year and now, it does seem like there's been a huge surge in interest during the pandemic said Shinwei Chang, a manga collector who lives in Massachusetts. They collect manga in multiple languages, Japanese, Mandarin, Chinese, and English, owning over 200 volumes in total. If that isn't the biggest eye-opener right there for where comic books are, where they're completely stagnant when you talk about superhero comics, comic books written for adults in the U.S., and manga. It's absolutely insane. Grew from 11,000 on a subreddit to over 1 million. How many people are out there just really excited about comic books right now? I talk about comic books every day, and there are things I'm excited about, but more often than not, I'm rolling my eyes at all the stupid decisions going on. But when you talk to manga readers, for the most part, they're really satisfied because you get the distinct impression that manga aren't going out of their way to just destroy their entire business, you know, the way that Marvel and DC and a lot of the modern creators in comic books are. This is what Kay Winters, marketing associate at Tokyo Pop, had to say. Demand for manga representing the LGBTQ plus community has increased for Tokyo Pop. Manga sales in general have gone up across the board, and we've seen our Love Times Love romance collection in particular take off in a big way. Guess what manga aren't doing with their characters? They're not going, you know what? There's not enough LGBTQ representation in My Hero Academia. Let's start having the characters coming out. Whoa, what do you mean Demon Slayer doesn't have enough representation? Let's flip the sexuality on 5 characters that people like. No, there's multiple genres, and within there are genres specifically for LGBTQ characters and readers. Fantastic. Certainly you get that in the other mangas as well, but it hasn't overtaken it, and they've understood that people go to the superhero style mangas for superhero stories. They go to the Love Times Love manga for the LGBTQ representative stories, and I'm sure they could have a superhero story in there or whatever. And they go to the cookie manga for cookie type stories, and they realize these genres have inherent things that customers expect from them. When you go overboard in trying to mash the genres up, unless you're a really good writer, a lot of times it comes off as hacked, and it pisses everybody off, especially when you talk about DC and Marvel, because an overwhelming majority of their most popular characters are 50 years old or older. They're firmly established within their continuity of who they are and the history of the characters. You don't see manga going in there and just start destroying everything so they can placate one audience that already has their own genre sitting right there on the market. Because manga isn't run by a bunch of morons. They're actually business people. They're not hacktivists that are trying to destroy their own business and their own way of actually making money. You can have these comic books, you can have these stories for particular audiences. You don't have to destroy everything to placate one audience. It can be done very well, and manga is really the best example of it. We've been talking about these issues in the comic book industry for a long time here on the channel. In October of last year, Perch came on the channel. We talked about how DC and Marvel couldn't rise to the challenge of manga. They weren't learning anything from them. Definitely check this video out. We've been talking about it for a while, but there's a lot of really, really good information in here.